Well, okay, so if we look at what has done well over the last, let's just say 10 years or so, right? I mean, we are literally talking about how single player first person shooters are not really the thing anymore, unless you're like Doom Eternal, essentially. But and everyone's always going towards the live service stuff and yada yada, publishers, and looking at this, shareholders and everything, that's what they focus on the most, especially within the last 5 years. Now we've got a game like Judas coming out, aka the continuation of the guy who made BioShock, people coining it the term BioShock in space type of thing. Can something like that do well? Because there was a ton of reviews, and he like brought a bunch of content creators and other people within the industry over, and they played the game for like 5 hours or something like that. Now it's nowhere near release time or anything like that, but there have been a bunch of previews and interviews and podcast stuff that you can listen to. One of my favorite personally is listening to Skill Up's video. He did a very good video on kind of just describing what the game is, because even though we've seen a couple of trailers for it, there's still a lot of unknown stuff, because he's always talking about things like Lego, narrative and everything, or how the world and the story connects and everything, right? So I wanted to ask you, Lemon, what are your personal thoughts when you see that? Because again, from people who grew up with BioShock, right, who it was deep in story, but it was generally a one single direction, right? And then this whole new concept that he's actually talked about at GDC presentations since like 2015, based on Skillup's video, where he's talking about, where you do one thing and it like affects the other NPCs and they're still doing something else as it goes through. Do you think something like that is going to work? Because he is toting that very heavily here in this upcoming game, Judas of his. Do you think something like that's going to work? Do you think it's just a gimmick thing, like any typical marketing? What are your personal, just overall thoughts on the game and everything?
So I like to preface this with BioShock and Infinite being some of my favorite games of all time. So I want to preface that with that.
So there is some bias, obviously, but I mean, let's be perfectly honest though, anyone who reviews or talks about games or anything, there's always some level of bias to it, right?
Sure.
So
sure.
and as long as you're open about that, perfectly fine. So go full bias, what are your personal thoughts when it comes to this particular game? Because again, like I've stated, we're super excited for a potential like this because it's something from BioShock, but is it going to sell well in this current day and age?
I think those are two different questions. As a person who loves video games, I am intrigued and I will play whatever Ken Levine makes. As a humongous fan of BioShock, there's a bit of hesitance with the whole roguelike thing about it. I mean, because when I think roguelike, I think of like Hades, right? Keep playing the game over and over and over and over again to understand the whole storyline. Whereas like BioShock, a single player FPS, you play it once, you get the vibe of it, you understand storyline, understand why the main character did what they did in BioShock 1. I'm pumped for it. However, of what I've seen of it and what is described, I'm concerned a bit about the storyline. So when they say narrative Legos, in the sense of, in my mind, again, just hearing what the marketing, which is what is effectively marketing, right? Like that's what this is marketing of the game. In my mind, this sounds like there's kind of like narrative tent poles, like there's like story highlights that they're going to hit. It's random how you get to those points in the storyline. Crazy shit could happen between point A and point B, which is fine, but it depends on how many story points there are. If there's 4 major story plot points in the whole franchise, whole game, I'm a little concerned, right? Because like BioShock needs a bit more than that, story points to kind of get from you went down in a submarine on a random lighthouse to would you kindly? And I'm kind of expecting that out of Judas. So I hope there's a lot of these story points, but the kind of randomness between the story points concerns me.
Okay, I could see that, yeah. Because again, it's a concept that I feel like, as I mentioned in the Skill Up video and everything, he talked about this way back during like a GDC presentation in like 2015. And so something like that to really, work the way I think that he wants it to work, I don't think it's gonna go the way he wants it to, at least in my own personal opinion, just simply because this has been a thing in game development for years, right? Where they want to do something and then they talk about this grand scale of how it works and everything. And then when it releases, it's like a shell of what they kind of promised, right? Or it's nowhere near what they wanted it to be. Now, I'm not saying Judas is going to be like that. I'm not saying that there's no chance that it can't be good in terms of that particular type of concept. Because again, like we stated beforehand, you and I, we played all the original BioShocks and everything, and we loved the gameplay, the settings, the weapons, the powers, all that stuff. But in terms of, again, using his terms, the Lego block building of this like kind of storytelling and everything, that is a little concerning if it's really going to work out the way it is. Because again, all of these previews are only about 5 hours of playing the game, and it's nowhere near ready. It's if I had to take a wild guess, I'd say it's probably going to be a late 2025 release. Wild guess here. I think like you, I am excited, especially on the gameplay front of it, but at the same time, I'm a little concerned about some of the big marketing pushes that they're going to try, and I feel like people are going to latch onto those, and then when they don't hit, it's going to be a bunch of backlash, essentially. You know, it's going to be like anything like Starfield or anything, right, where they, you know, promise these huge open worlds and everything like that, and what did it turn out to be? It turned out to be just flat, boring, empty worlds, essentially, and the game has suffered for it, unfortunately. So, I mean, you're still waiting for a mini-map, and it's been 6+ months since that game released, and nothing.
Bingo, bango.
Right? And I mean, even the modders are leaving that game in droves. So it's kind of like, what's going to happen here? Especially for this game that is a single player, for the most part, linear, you know, I'll call it a first-person shooter, even though that's a very small term in terms of for this particular type of game. Because yes, it is in first person, but there's a lot more to than just simply shooting a weapon.
Exactly.
So it should be interesting, I think, what happens with it. But I'm just really hoping that it's able to land the way, because there have been, because after Infinite, has he been working on this game since Infinite finished, or is this something that he worked on a different project and that fell through, and now he's working on this particular one? I can't remember.
So Ken Levine, and this might get me a bit of hot water, but he is the epitome of don't meet your heroes. It's my understanding, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, commenters or whatever, after Infinite, he started something, decided it ain't working, and then effectively left Rational Games. So he left, and then 2K was like, yeah, Rational without Ken Levine's not a studio we want, and they dismantled the whole thing in the French. So he left, and then this is the next thing we heard about from Ken Levine. So he kind of lends itself to being, he's not the nicest guy in terms of caring about other people's, you know, jobs. He's very much centered on what he wants. But overall, I think there's a bit of a dichotomy between a story-driven, hardcore kind of game, not even going into genre, just a very story-centric game versus a you make your own storyline. So like there's games like, I don't know, Terraria or Minecraft, where there's really no storyline, you make your own, and then that's how it sells the game, versus something like a Kojima game. His games generally are like a roller coaster kind of game, and you know, Ken Levine's games, you know, BioShock is a roller coaster type of game. You're led along a path, and there's a kind of a sense of you control the game, but you really don't. Let's go sticking to BioShock. You can either choose to mine the atom, to harvest the atom, or not harvest the atom. And there's kind of two diverging paths, but effectively at the end of the day, you still find out that Andrew Ryan is an asshole, right? Like it doesn't diverge very far. And so to see how Judas is kind of, as he says, a narrative Lego game, I'm very intrigued by it, but I'm also of the mind that it's not going to be as divergent as he wants to say it is. I don't think it's going to be the case of like No Man's Sky, where it's just absolutely a shit show when it comes out, or to be the original, a Peter Molyneux style game for all you old farts like myself. But I also think that, I mean, it might be somewhat divergent, might have, you know, funny story beats interspersed, but I feel like the storyline will be much the same. To your original point, can this kind of game survive anymore? I don't know. I would like to think they would, but I'm also an old man who's, you know, kind of out of his element, I guess.
Well, yeah.
I don't play Fortnite.
Well, and yeah, neither of us do. And so, like, personally for me, like, when I've watched the gameplay trailers and I listened to all of the interviews and everything, when it comes to the gameplay of it, I'm not talking about the story stuff, the Lego block, you know, story building or anything like that. Like, playing the game, it looks like a lot of fun. But is that enough to sell it to the mass majority of people who are gaming, especially in this generation? I would say that a lot of people are not looking as fondly at as something like the previous generation and everything. And that's a huge combination of different things, whether it's COVID, or, you know, the consoles aren't selling as much. They don't have as many exclusives because they're still doing either previous gen, or they're not pushing the boundaries as much as we want them to, or anything like that. So can a game like this do that? Maybe. I'm kind of hoping it does. But again, trailers and everything are meant to make the game look at its best, right? And so if it can deliver on everything from the gameplay to the story that it's trying to tell to the performance, because performance is important. Say what you will about, you know, how awesome Dragon's Dogma 2 is and everything like that. It still has a lot of technical issues, and even the most positive reviews are saying, wait for that until it finally gets fixed, however long that potentially takes, right?
Exactly.
So if this game has poor performance, then, and people are just like, look, just wait for a sale type of thing, that cuts into all of those, you know, sales that they're trying to get. And if it gets put onto a subscription service, that's gonna basically spell the doom of it. So will that work? It's hard to say. I hope it does. I really, really hope it does. It's something we kind of unfortunately have to wait on.
I want a narrative FPS. I was very much burned by, it's like a Russian game.
Oh,
oh my God.
I'm blanking on the name, but yes, I know.
You know what I'm talking about? Like that to me was, everyone is heralding as like the next BioShock. I'm like, yes, sign me up. I played it day one on Game Pass. It was not BioShock. So something about Ken Levine, his able to make this, you know, the BioShock games really solid. Even BioShock 2, which he had nothing to do with, was a very solid game. I have a lot of high hopes for Judas. I hope it's good. I don't know if there's a audience for this game, but there's at least an audience for me. I will buy this day one, just because he's involved.
Right. And I think a lot of the most older gamers, if you want to, I think a lot of us look at that in a more positive light than maybe younger gamers do. You know, it's just a generation thing, right? Where certain, you know, there are gamers that are much older than us who prefer the much older style of games. But honestly, if I go back and try to play some of those games, I'm just like, God, these controls are so janky, or, you know, it's just like I can't get over some of the stuff that, you know, there's definitely a lot of nostalgia glasses to it, essentially, right? You have your nostalgia glasses on. So, but I think in terms of maybe gamers who are around our age, you know, late 20s, early 30s, kind of call them the millennials if you want, I guess. I think a lot of us are definitely excited for this type of game, and I hope that others are as well, especially when we kind of get a more confirmed date in terms of when it's going to be released. Because again, we saw trailers of this last year a little bit, and there's barely anything. And it's clear that this game's been worked on for the last, I'd say 5 to 6 years at minimum. I mean, it's going to be at least another year until it releases. So hopefully the marketing and actually showing gameplay. Will we see a demo? I hope so. I know demos aren't the big thing that they used to be anymore, but they kind of slowly making a comeback. And I think a demo would do a lot of work for it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You know, I mean, a demo did wonders for games like Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth and everything. So demos do well. And I mean, you get the Stellar Blade demo coming up. And if a lot of people enjoy the combat in that, and not just how it looks or how a particular character looks, then I think it could sell way more, right? Just speaking realistically.
Yeah.
Sure. I really hope we do get some kind of demo eventually for this. Even it doesn't even need to be the full 5-hour demo that these podcasts and everything we're talking about. Just an hour or two, perfectly fine with me. I think it could definitely be good. And as long as it can hit all those marks, I really do hope it can do well. I hope that I know $70 is a big asking point for a lot of people. I 100% get that, but as long as the game is good, I hope that we'll consider supporting that.
Agreed. I again, it's all of faith at this point. To me, Ken Levine is kind of, I don't want to go Kojima levels. I think Kojima's he's on a tour when it comes to games and everything, but to me, Ken Levine's up there. Like, I really enjoyed BioShock and Infinite. Like, to me, BioShock 1 was kind of the game that made me think about what it was trying to say. To me, it was more than just jumping on Goombas. It's more of an age thing, I imagine, than anything else, because, you know, Metal Gear Solid was a pretty meta game. It had a lot of deep elements that talked about real life, about governments, about politics and everything. But that was about 10 years too early for me. I was too young for it.
Yeah, we were too young for it.
But BioShock was dead on. Like, I feel like BioShock was kind of a game that kind of turned me on to thinking differently about the world. Like, whereas movies normally would do that, but to me as a gamer, like, that was kind of like my thing. So I have a lot of high hopes for Judas, which even the name itself intrigues me. Like, Judas, like, you know, the ultimate betrayer. Ultimate Trader.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have a lot of hopes for it. I expect a lot of philosophy in it. As long as it kind of hits those same kind of, at least making me think, it doesn't need to be as, it could be totally off with its, philosophy and stuff. But as long as it gives me something a bit deeper than just shooting things, violence, shooting things, RPG, that kind of stuff, I'm in. Like just a bit of a deeper game is all I will ask for.
Yeah, I think it's what a lot of us are hoping from, who are excited about this, and those of us who played the original BioShocks and everything.
Exactly.
And if you haven't played them,
it could be a 7 out of 10. I don't care. I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah. And if you haven't tried them, by the way, for everyone watching the video, you can probably go find them on sale right now. I mean, pretty sure they have the collector's edition, or played on PC or anything like that. It's been a while since those games came out, so you can easily run it. So highly recommend it.
It might be quote unquote retro at this point. It's been that old, but like I cannot recommend BioShock 1 enough.
Stop making me feel old. Just stop making me feel old, man.